Hello, my name is Xavier Roman. Roman. Here I will start with my presentation of my project. As you can see on the right, you can see all the information, the basic information. Alright, that's an introduction. My project is about a system that can be used to track and repair potholes in a convenient and not too costly way. It makes it so that multiple inputs by the user can make several reports of the potholes at the same time without having to go back to the start, which should keep the user from getting frustrated. It also can present the reports for a single pothole by just inserting an ID number. The first thing I would point out is that it starts with 4 options that a user can click to decide what to do next, so it makes it convenient to learn quickly for new users. The second thing I will point out is that the interface for inputting reports is a table that allows information about multiple potholes to be entered and is simple for new users to understand. Also, when the user wants to see the report for a single pothole, the user can alter the report by entering the ID number of the pothole. The model type, the development model I would use would be prototypes. This allows for changes in development of the system since the explanation requirements are very vague to me. And the true risk of the system would be, first, the explanation for the requirements were vague, so it's possible it doesn't meet the requirements. So to handle that, I just used the prototype model. Second, not knowing if it's exactly how the client would want it, I would have to ask later about if it meets the client standards. And third, since I have no idea what the budget is, I would have to ask later about the budget to the client and if possible, negotiate for more money. The programming language I would use for this system is Java because that's one I'm most familiar with and it allows for object-oriented programming. If I were to choose between processes and objects, I would use objects because I'm simply more familiar than processes. In this system, I would use Linux for the software since it's the most open and free, and for the CPU, I would use Ryzen 3 since it only costs $120 and it's good enough. I would also use hard disks for the hardware since to store the data, and if it's ever filled, we can just simply use a new one. My estimated cost for this project would honestly depend on the budget. As for the components, Linux is free and CPU is $120, and a hard disk would only cost like $100 at most. My project is convenient and isn't very expensive. All the interfaces are simple and easy to learn. For new users, that makes it easier for them to want the job. The money you spend on this project will not be wasted and you won't be disappointed with it. As I made this project, I learned a lot to make this all possible. My understanding of the ERD, flowchart, DFD, etc. has greatly improved since doing this project. Now for the informe. Alright, here's the welcome to my informe. Here's a table of contents and the introduction. My project is about a system that tracks and repairs potholes. You can expect that it does this using many inputs by the user. It connects some of the inputs together to organize information, to then present it to the user when the user requests for the information inputted for the pothole or potholes. So here's the explanation for my system. First, here's Pitagora. You see, I basically did this all on my own, all since the start. Here's the time assigned for each part of the model phases. Alright, here's the ERD. The ERD for my system starts with a socio-identity entity that connects to entity's work order data and damage report. The work order data has a one-to-many relationship since multiple crew, equipment, etc. can be associated with multiple holes, but a pothole can only be associated with one. Damage report is as many-to-many relationship because multiple citizens can make multiple reports about multiple potholes. The account identity is not associated with anything. In my flowchart, it starts asking the username and password, then it checks to see if it's true in the system. If it is, it goes to the next step and does not end. The next step is that it goes into a loop for the information to be created and stops asking for information when the questions are complete and the user doesn't wish to make more reports. The loop starts with asking what the user wants to do and then presents the tables for the input of information. Then when it is done, it will go to the next step. Next step is that the system will ask the user if they want to see information about a specific pothole. If the user does not, it will end. If they do, it will ask the user for identification number of the pothole and present the info of the specific hole. Here's the data flow diagram level 0. A DFD for level 0 is a very simple one since it receives inputs of the user, processes them in the system, and organizes them into appropriate entity. In my DFD level 1, you can see the flow for the data in the system's more definitive way, like how the user inputs information is stored in the system and is then sent to the right entities. In my data dictionary, I will start explaining about the metadata for damage report and accounts. In the metadata for damage report, the only primary key is the identifying number of the pothole, while the rest are not null. In the metadata account, we can see that all the data is not null to receive all the inputs. In work order data, you can see the primary key is identifying number of the pothole as well as the work crew number, since it's necessary for the relationship of the pothole and work data entities. The rest are not null since it's necessary for the system to receive all the inputs to be outputted as it is expected. In the metadata for pothole, we can see that the identifying number for the pothole is the only PK, while the rest are not null since it is necessary for the user to make all the inputs. Right? My first interface is a simple username and password, one that has to input for access to the system. My second one is the one where the user clicks one of the 4 options and continues based on those decisions. Pothole report allows user to enter the specific information of the pothole. Work order data option allows to make the report of which crew is working on which hole. Damage report is for filling in a report about the damage of the hole and information about who reported it. And finally, the continue to see the pothole information option that allows user to see the already made reports about a specific hole. The next interface is the input table interface for the pothole report, where the user makes inputs in the rows based on the title of the columns. The next interface is the input table interface for the work order data, where the user makes inputs on the rows based on the title and columns. The next interface is the input table interface for damage report, where the user makes inputs in the rows based on the titles and columns. The next interface is one for when the option for receiving information about a specific pothole is chosen, where it simply asks for the identifying number of the pothole and then presents all tree tables but filled with information of the pothole. I didn't include a picture because it's just a previous tree all formed in a line. What kind of software development model would you use in the design phase? I would use the prototype model since it allows for changes in development of the system, since the explanation of the requirements were very vague. Second question. First, since the explanation of the requirements were vague, so it's possible it doesn't meet the requirements. So I handle this by using a prototype model since it allows for the most changes. Second, not knowing if it's how the client wants it to be handled. So to handle, I just simply ask him. Third, since I don't know how big is the budget, I would simply ask the client what is the budget, and if possible, I would ask for more. Third question, the language I would use for this is Java, since it's the most familiar and allows for object-oriented programming. And object-oriented programming is simply something I'm more familiar with than processes, and familiarity can be very important during this project. Anyway, the stuff I would use for software is Linux, since it's the most open and free system. And for CPU, I would just use Ryzen 3 since it works well enough and it uses only $120. And number 6, a single hard disk should be enough to store the data, and I would just simply use a new one when it gets full. As for the 7th question, my estimated cost would depend on the budget, honestly. As for the components, the Linux is free and the CPU is $120, and the hard disk would cost $100. The project allows user to make a report based on 3 decisions and presents you that report through a 4th choice, which can be very convenient to the user. It's always convenient that it displays all the information of a single pothole on simply imputing an ID number for the pothole. Also, you can make multiple reports of multiple potholes at the same time. During this project, I've been learning a lot at a much faster pace than before, because this made me teach myself all that I need to make this all possible. Here are the references. Hang on, how do I turn this off? Was I just speaking? Was I just saying stuff for nothing?
So you want to be a software engineer at Google? Go to
It's not the time for ads.
outlive.io. Pick a question. Read the prompt. Write. Go to the folder where you chose to save the video. Click Grab. That's the option to resize the. Now you'll see it recording this time. Do whatever it is you want to record. If you're also recording your webcam and audio, you can do real-time commentary along with your screen recording. When you're finished, hit Control and End on your keyboard to.
Okay, Control and